Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Your Day with David. And it's Your Day with David and Quentin Fowler, the first guy on the podcast that I'm bringing on from my hometown. I've pretty much focused primarily all the other episodes with my community here in the St. Louis area or the people that I met in college, or in my case, some of my mentors in the Chicago area, whatever it might be. And I hadn't had a chance really to bring on someone back home that, in a lot of ways, similar to kind of my path to where I'm at now. But then also, I kind of want to hear maybe his perspective, maybe how things are similar or different to him growing up too. Q, do you want to? Wow, when was the last time I called you Q? Man, it's almost like surreal for me because I don't think I've seen you personally face to face since our 5-year reunion, which,
Yeah, I
by the
mean,
way, are 10-year reunions next year.
I know that's actually crazy. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was before COVID for sure. Um,
hmm Well, we keep
yeah,
talking about how, either I'll make a trip over to Wichita or you'll come to St. Louis to watch a Cardinals game or whatever the hell it might
I
be. And
know.
then
I
it
think we're just
never
gonna have to go to
happens.
Kansas City and split the difference, and
Yeah.
meet in the middle.
Hit a
I did.
P&L,
I
something
did
like
listen
that.
to one of your episodes. You had met your gamer friends in Kansas City. I was like, oh, see, look at that.
Yeah.
That's a perfect idea. It's 3 hours for me. It's 3 hours for you. It'd be perfect.
Yeah, that was a really good time. That was with my buddy Chris, who we call Banana, and just that surprise trip that we were like, you know what, screw it. It was my birthday. Let's and he kind of planned the whole thing out. So in fact, it's funny because this birthday, I'm turning 27 here in June. We're
Mm.
heading to Galena, Illinois, kind of little getaway, and he's actually flying in. I haven't seen him since then. He's flying
Oh,
in
sick.
on that Wednesday or something. We're going to carpool up to Illinois together. So
That'd be awesome. You guys like going to the lake out there and stuff?
yeah. So the place we're staying at, it's kind of tucked back in the woods there. If you're familiar with
Mm.
the Galena area, but it is right next to Lake Galena, and um, yeah, tucked back. Kind of, it's just a nice place. Like
Yeah.
it's a nice place to be at, but you definitely feel like you're disconnected from, I guess, the rest of the world, which is kind of the appeal of it,
Yeah,
right?
I know mom and dad really like going out there for a week or a long weekend or something every once in a while.
Okay. It's funny you bring that up because I was going to ask, because once they got that RV, they kind of just went sayonara to, to
well,
everywhere, right?
well,
Or,
they did some stuff for a while, and I don't know if they're just like I think maybe they thought it was going to be a great idea, and now they moved, right? So I don't know if you've probably seen them since they moved, but they moved out north of Unionville, out into the country. So they don't really, I mean, they're
oh,
just kind of
I
hanging
didn't
out
know
there
that.
now. Yeah, so they don't have the house in town anymore. So
Yeah, I
um,
didn't know they sold that. And I was going to touch on that a little bit, but I didn't know I would have thought that if they moved, they would have moved far,
right.
you know?
Yeah,
It's
they found a good spot out in the country where no one could find them, and I think they like it that way.
fair enough. Fair enough.
All the kids are gone, so less responsibilities, and they got the dogs out there, and you know,
Yeah. Well, the reason why I want to bring you on too, again, because I mean, I could have brought anyone back from our hometown on here, but the reason why I wanted you to be the first one was you, Wade, Mona, Hannah, never really have met Jessica, strangely enough. But in fact, Jessica's kind of this.
it's a figment of your imagination.
Yeah, I'm still not sure she really exists, but that's fine. I mean, you guys were very much kind of like my second family, right? So my family, we lived, when people ask me where I'm from, I say, well, the middle of nowhere. And then, was the town. And then I lived even more in the middle of nowhere from that middle of nowhere town.
Yeah.
I was one of the few people that, well, it's funny, I say few people, there's only few people where we go. But I was one of the few people that just lived in the country. And
Mhm.
so I always had this feeling like, man, like everyone would just hang out in town, right? They could go to the city park or KK, TNL, or just do whatever. And then, I would be like, all right, guys, see, I'm hopping on the bus, while everyone
Yeah.
was walking back home. I was hopping on the bus and but playing in sports together, your parents were more than willing to open up the home, and we would swing by your place,
Mhm.
before game nights or wherever it might be, and just hang out there. I mean, really, just like anything, go hunting with your family or
Mhm.
video
Yeah.
games as well.
I mean, we lived in such a convenient spot for being the gathering place for all of the kids, right? Like two blocks from the
Two blocks
school.
down.
And
Two
then,
blocks down.
and I think like our families share some similarities and like the
Hmm.
family makeup, right? Our dads got along really well, and my mom's kind of come from similar-ish backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, that's one thing too. I won't bring it up just yet, but your family was the only other Asian family in the entirety of our city.
you could never
I
tell
mean
by looking
town.
at me.
Yeah, and like depending on how long I can let my mustache grow, I look much more Hispanic than I do Filipino. But yeah, we gotta get you back in the sun, man. Just a little bit.
Dude, I feel so white. I think it's just my light from my computer.
Whatever you have to tell
I
yourself.
got a little tan going on. Don't worry. I've been
Yeah,
playing some
yeah.
golf. See, is that better? Maybe
Yeah.
that's
I was
better.
going to ask if you're still playing golf because, I was thinking one of the things that Quinn and I have in similarities was since our town was so small, he and I actually played sports for the next town over in Centerville.
Mm. Uh,
Um,
I'm playing less than I used to, which is kind of sad, but still some every once in a while. Played last weekend.
why do you think you're playing less? It's warmer out now.
I know. Well, like I moved, so I bought a house last year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of on the opposite side. So when I first moved here, I joined a club and I was playing every week, and I was playing a lot. And when I bought my house, I moved uh, north away from the golf course, so it's
Uh,
farther away, and it's kind of a pain to get to, and there's nowhere really close by to play. So I'm still just
okay.
I'm in a middling period of figuring out where I want to go next. The closest golf course is like $350 a month to join, and it's a little out of
Yeah.
my budget.
Yeah. You have to really get your money's worth if you pay for it, which means you really have to travel every single weekend or
Mhm.
more. Okay. Sweet. Well, that was one thing too. So, man, there's just so many things I want to talk about with you. Oh, this is
No,
so
I
much
feel
fun.
like most of our conversations are always at like 2 a.m. after like 15 beers and are for like 3 hours. So I don't know how you can do this in an hour. Good
Yeah,
luck,
well,
sir.
because we're always at like two cycles. I mean, when I see you, we're at two cycles and we're there till bar close, and then we go after bar close, yeah, to your place or uh, yeah. So uh, let's which one do I want to talk about? So first, let's talk about you are one of a small handful of our class that ended up moving out of the entirety of the state,
Mhm.
right? I will share quickly my experience. I found out at a very young age that I did not necessarily enjoy small town life, right? I think by the time I turned 8, I moved there when I was 4, which was also interesting, right? Because you you guys in preschool had already known each other growing up because it's such a small town, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Like the same babysitters and stuff. And
yeah. And so
yeah.
like, I come in at 4, not that I really remember being 4 years old, but I think everyone is like, oh, the new guy and trying to fit in, meet new friends. And, but then I found out probably by the time I was like 8 years old, not that my brain was really functioning a whole lot at 8, but I was probably like, like I'm bored, like I'd done all the things, my dad had the 4-wheelers. We go fishing and hunting, all that stuff. And at some point, like that's all you can do.
Mhm.
Right. And so I, at a young age, kind of felt like I wanted something bigger,
Right.
bigger than Molten. Right. Now, I guess you were born and raised though
Mhm.
in that
Yep.
town.
Yep. And just like going backwards, my grandfather's from the same town. He built
Mm-hmm.
the house that my parents lived in and that I lived in growing up, right? So it's kind of been like when my parents sold the house and moved there, it's the first time there's not a Fowler living in Molten for a long, long time. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I had the same like early realization that I didn't want to be there forever. Um, but I think it was kind of my parents were very much always you should go and do and see different things and don't just be here forever.
Mm.
I remember whenever I was trying to figure out where I was going to go to college, um, and my parents like they're the greatest parents ever because like they, I they're so
Special
supportive
people.
and like will do whatever they want for you, right? Like they'll do anything for you. But my dad, I remember very specifically a time when I was trying to figure out where I was going to go for college. He's like, you can go wherever you want. Like we'll send you wherever you want to go, but you can't stay here. He's like, you have to go somewhere else.
No Indian Hills for you.
Yeah. And so I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like, sounds good. And I didn't go that far away. I went to Iowa State, but I was never a person that went home every weekend or was spending a lot of
Yeah.
time in Southern Iowa. I was out doing my own thing, and I give that to my parents and the the way that they raised us and how
Yeah.
they tried to
If
push us out
only
into the world.
if only Stanford said yes, right?
Right. I would have been way farther away.
Yeah. I remember that being such a well, it didn't happen, but like in my mind, I was like, man, wouldn't it be something super cool? Like, it's funny too, because you think about all these, to be fortunate enough to go there. Probably you have to come from a background of privilege or whatever it might be to go to any Ivy League school. And so kind of when we found out or when we heard like you were applying for Stanford and all this stuff like that, because you did so well on the ACT, I was like, man, like
Yeah.
Quinn's going to make it big, like what in our head, like what big was,
Yeah.
and then I think when, I went to Iowa State and then you kind of learn a little bit about the real world and the real world. Making it big is such a vague and
Right.
subjective thing.
It's so undefinable. But yeah,
Yeah.
like so that you mentioned that, I was listening to your episode, actually the one we were just talking about where you were in Kansas City, and how he found out he didn't get the job while you guys were there, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, and the first thing I thought of was that I remember exactly where I was when I found out that I didn't get in. Because like I did really good on my test, and I was like, you're a naive high school kid, like you don't know anything about how anything works, right? I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. Like I'm gonna apply to these schools, and I'm probably gonna get in somewhere that's really awesome, and it'll be great. And I'll never forget, we were in Moravia before a basketball game. I was sitting in the
Mm,
stands. We were watching the girls' basketball game before we go, to the locker room to
I
get
see.
ready for our game.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in there, and I got an email on my phone, and I had a missed phone call, and I went and I looked at the email, and it told me that I didn't get in, and I was like, well, shit, like I got to go play a basketball game now. Can't think
Damn.
about that. Like we got other things to do. But yeah, so
Did you tell
that,
people about that, or did you just like hold like you didn't tell anyone you got that email at that moment, or?
no, I just kind of like put it away, and I was like, well, I guess we'll deal with this later.
Yeah, because I think if you would have mentioned that, we would have been like, oh shit,
Yeah, no,
that's
I don't like projecting my things on other people. I'm a very internally held person when it
uh
comes to stuff like that.
very healthy. Very.
Yeah, so healthy. I just drink too much coffee and alcohol, and we power through.
Yeah, sometimes the ratio to coffee and alcohol varies on the day. I get it.
Oh,
Mine's 100% coffee this morning, but maybe I can't say the same for you.
yeah, like I'm not very good at talking. Uh, I get a little nervous and things, so I gotta have a little smoother. I gotta have a little. There's not
Some liquid
30% in
courage.
here. Yeah, not 30% in here.
No. And so for people listening, people watching, just some background on like what it was like for me going to the Fowler home. We would go there. Your mom would always have something cooking. Always.
She cooks so much. She's insane.
Yeah, and it was always so good. And then they'd always have on that tiny TV in the kitchen, and ideally there'd be an Iowa State
The little
game
box
on.
TV.
Oh man, that thing was so tiny, so
Oh, it's so
tiny.
crappy. And it weighed like 800 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. I remember much later, probably when we were in college, when your dad bought that huge TV for your living room,
Mm.
and like how much of a difference it was. But then I remember so many times too, just passing out on the couch in the living room, and yeah, sometimes I forget, and maybe you remember more, just like the 3 hour long conversations till we pass out. Um, do you keep in touch much with anyone from back home still, or?
Not really in like regular contact. Like I still, talk to, like Caitlin and Natalie and Haley, and then
Yeah,
like Gray some. But that's really about it. Other than that, I don't really
yeah.
talk to too many people from home.
You don't hear much from Kyle either.
No, like, it's kind of like birthdays or like celebrations and stuff, we'll text for a little bit, and that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I just think of I we were talking about a little bit before we started, but the last time that I had seen Q face to face was our 5-year high school reunion, and then next year will be our 10-year. And I guess this is a good time to ask: do you think you'll end up going?
It depends. Probably. I mean, I'll make an effort to go. Like
Hmm.
if I'm available to be there, I will be there.
Okay.
Which is not like a huge, it's 5 hours for me to drive home, so it's not a crazy thing. I can make a long weekend out of it. And did we do Memorial Day last weekend or last time? I feel like it'll be a long weekend thing, so maybe it'll make it easier. But yeah, like I would like to go with some
Oh,
people. I feel really bad because like Kaylin and Natalie had a kid, and I haven't met the kid yet, right? Like
yeah.
I was at home for um, Christmas, which they had him just before Christmas or just after
So
Thanksgiving, whatever
you
it is between.
couldn't.
But I didn't have time to like make it to go see them, and they're busy. Obviously, they have a kid now, so
Yeah.
they have
Do
responsibilities. So
they still live in Moulton, or I don't really know what their living
uh,
situation?
they live like out in the country, north of town, sort of between Moulton and Unionville, so like close by,
Okay.
but out in the country.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
and then like I haven't seen Haley and Carter for a while, and it's weird being in that situation of our life now where I'm like I miss my friends and their kids instead of
Just
like
missing my friends.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah.
I do feel bad, and I was kind of thinking about this and how you kind of move through your stages of life, and you've had this podcast, right? And you've talked to like sort of your St. Louis friends and your college friends. And I feel the same way where like I have my Wichita friends now, the group that I hang out with here. And that's who I talk with most. Like that's who I interact with every day. And then I have a couple people from college that I'm still really close with and I talk to all the time. And then I have like my home friends, which I don't talk to them that often. But when I see them, like it's like we never left, right? It's always
Right.
like
It's
we
all
were
still
still at home.
there.
But that makes me feel bad because I'm like, there's still like, it's not like I don't want to talk to those people and that I don't like them anymore. It's just like I have different obligations and I have less time and I have people that I'm immediately around with that I put time into those relationships instead. And it's
Yeah.
hard and it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's weird to say it's like prioritizing friendships, if you will.
Well,
But
it is what it is though, right? At the end of the
yeah.
day.
Well, because like, friendships a lot of times are like a matter of convenience, right? You talk to the people that are 2 feet away from you instead of 2,000 miles away, right?
Yeah.
Um, for good reason, because if you don't talk to the people that are right next to you, then you
Right.
lose that friend group, right? You
Yeah.
have to establish that. And
Yeah.
I agree, though. It's so weird. Um, like, because I miss Haley and her kid. I miss, I miss talking to Kyle and Danielle, and they're doing their own thing that I think they're busy with, and everyone still lives their own life. Nothing stops. Um, and the next thing you know, you blink and it's been 10 years,
I know. I can't believe it's
right?
been 10 years almost.
Well, I was talking to people too about when I moved to St. Louis, and I talk about like, yeah, I graduated or actually 5 years ago. Now it's
Mhm.
like, wow, it was half a decade ago I
Right.
graduated,
Yeah.
and I remember when I first came to St. Louis, I thought I'd only really be here for about a year, kind of like a pass through town, and then I move on to the
Mhm.
next place, whether it's Chicago or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
and then I found myself still here, right?
Yep.
Because you start meeting new people, meeting new friends, new obligations, and my case, I don't have a home, but like you bought this a place last year
Mhm.
in Wichita. Now, what's the plan? Do you think you're gonna stay in Wichita? You got this new friend group, or like,
Yeah.
is there a city you're like, you know what, like one day I'll look to see what's next?
So I had sort of the same experience that you did where I moved here not expecting to be here forever. Like it's freaking Wichita, Kansas, right? Who wants to live in Wichita?
Yeah.
Uh, um, but like I moved here and like I work for a great company that I actually really enjoy,
Mm.
being a part of.
Still
And
a Cessna or
yeah,
slash
so it's
Textron?
it's Textron Aviation is the name of the our Wichita based company, which it's Cessna and Beechcraft. They merged together in like 2014 or something. Anyways,
Oh, okay.
so um, and so like I moved here sort of knowing that, but knowing that Textron, the parent like conglomerate company, owns a whole bunch of countries all over the country that or a whole bunch of companies all over the country that you can pretty easily get moved to if you want to go try something else. Like, so we have Bell Helicopter in Dallas. We have some East Coast companies. There's Easy Goes in Georgia. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you could go do if you really wanted to. But then, like, I moved here and like I actually really like it. You know, like I have a great group of friends that are all um, seem to be here for the foreseeable future. Um, a few of us have bought houses now, and it's kind of just nice being here and being set up. And obviously, like, I'm always open to change and opportunities. I'm not afraid to
Yeah,
go different places. So if the chance came where I could go somewhere cool and go start
it
over
makes
again, like,
sense.
I'd be okay to do it. But for now, I'm comfortable here.
Yeah. Now though, the idea of moving, there's a second voice that has to kind of agree with all that, right? So Erica,
Mhm.
right? You met her what was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think we've been dating for um, a little over 2 years now. It was like January of 2020, so right before COVID started was when we started
Wow.
dating. So we
That
have a COVID relationship.
oh man, again, been there, but I mean, you guys survived.
Mhm.
Survived the COVID relationship. How did you guys meet first of all?
Just through like a group of friends. Like, she was sort of friends with other people in our group, and then started coming to group functions, and then that's how I met her.
And then you guys shared some you guys had some eye lock over a bar or a drink or something. Who's this
uh,
tall Japanese man that looks like he's white?
yeah, I'm so Japanese looking. Most people have no idea until, like, I'm like, oh yeah, here's my grandma. She's very Asian.
Is she
I didn't get any of that.
your grandma's from Okinawa, right?
Yeah, yep. So
Yeah.
um, her and most of her family still live either in Japan or Okinawa. So it'd be like all of my mom's uncles and aunts still live there.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, grandma
So you
came
met
out.
Erica, friend of a friend. That's been
Mhm.
going on for 2 years now.
Yep.
Everything's going great, supposedly. And
Yeah.
you
Well,
know, it how's she on the same boat too, where like she's fine being with her for now, but then eventually like she's
yeah.
also down to just go whatever this opportunity.
Yeah, I think she's definitely open to moving. Her family is pretty so Erica's half Mexican. She has a very Mexican mother who
Mm,
likes being close to her kids. Uh, and I don't know, that seems to be like a cultural thing for Mexican mothers. Anyways, whatever.
no,
And
it is.
they live 30 minutes away, so
Mm,
pretty close proximity. And it would be a happily, I think Erica would have to have a conversation with her parents about, hey, like, we're gonna move somewhere. Um,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, like, you gotta do what's best for you and what you want to do. And I think she would
yeah.
be okay with that.
Okay. Does Erica do any like Latin dancing, like salsa or bachata?
She also looks very white and
She's
moves
pretty
very white.
whitewashed.
Yeah.
Okay. And here I thought we have another thing in common because I'm not sure if you know about all the other shows that I talked about. Like now I actually teach salsa dancing and stuff like that.
Yeah, you did
Um,
say so. I didn't know you were a teacher. You
well,
said that
yeah,
you
that's
were
more
going.
recent. That was
Oh,
more
okay.
recent. Yeah, I was taking lessons at this club that we go to, and then now depending on how large the class gets and certain people who show up on certain days and their I guess level of expertise,
Mhm.
uh, my instructor will say, hey, can you teach this portion of the class, and I'll
Hmm.
focus on this one.
You want to teach me
So
how to dance?
sure, just come on over to St. Louis, buddy. um, it's funny you mentioned that because on when I go to Galena, Illinois, my buddy that's flying in, Chris, he's flying in on a Thursday, and I'll pick him up at like 9:30 at the airport, and the club's open till 1. So I'm going to take him straight from that airport to the club, and I don't think he has any idea. I don't think I want to
Oh,
tell him.
what is it?
But
Like, is he gonna listen to this and now he's gonna know you just ruined it?
well, no, because shoot. Well, it's fine. It's fine.
Cut it out. Cut it out.
Okay, maybe I'll tell him. Maybe the surprise is lost. But
Uh,
and the cool thing about Chris too is he's always open to like do stuff like that. Like he's the guy that's like always down to hang. Oh, you
mhm.
want to do this? Yeah, let's go. I don't think I've ever heard him be like, I'm kind of tired, man. Like, he's
Dude,
just
I feel like I've turned into that person now. I'm kind of tired, man. I'm old. I don't want to do things.
well. I mean, I talk about on so many episodes. Like I forced myself to be this extrovert person over the last half year or so, always constantly going out, but I'm always constantly exhausted from it.
Yeah.
Like my battery dead. Like 10:30 comes around, I'm just a zombie, but I stay out as a zombie. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
the you're picking your own poison, I guess. Since we were talking about you don't really look Japanese, Erica's pretty whitewashed. You know, my experience, I'll just ask it, did growing up in that small town, did you ever experience much racism directed your way or?
Um, I don't think at the time I ever felt like I did.
Mm,
Looking back at it now, like I could like with some perspective on it, I think there were probably some things that, were said or done that probably were, but I don't think I ever felt it in the moment, if that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. And I didn't think that you had, so
Yeah.
I'm glad that I was correct in that assumption that
Hmm.
you never had to deal with that. Because
Yeah.
one story or one experience that I had, I was a very young age. It was a minor league baseball with you guys on the Yankees.
Hmm.
And I remember there's a guy on the team. I won't use names, but a much more uh, just that type of individual, I'd say. And
Uh-huh.
we were young, so I came to some of these realizations later. But I remember him saying something. I think I struck out.
Hmm.
Classic me striking out in baseball. And I'm walking back, and it might have been the third out of the inning, and he was on like second base or something. This person, so he like wanted to score. And as we're walking back to the dugout, God, I almost forgot the name. A dugout. We will pause real quick after that. But I remember coming back to the dugout, and he said, "Why didn't you get a hit, you dirty fucking Filipino?" This person, and we're
Jesus.
like, yeah, and we're like, I'm
How do you even come up with that when you're like 10
what
years old?
age? Yeah, were
Yeah.
we even 10?
Yeah.
This guy was like a year or so older than us. I can't remember. He ended up flunking out of high school anyway, and
Mm,
not really making a name out of stuff. But um, I was thinking, it's like, you know what? Like in that small town, this guy's never experienced a Filipino except for me.
right.
The only time he would ever hear something like that would have been from his parents.
Right. Yep.
So then it
100%.
kind of, kind
Yeah.
of, it's interesting because I know now, like when he would go home, his family would talk about like my family
Right. Yep.
and the
Because like
dirty
10-year-olds
Filipinos
don't.
that are coming into the town.
Yeah, because like little kids don't come up with that on their own, right? Like that's
Yeah.
not coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. And how violent of a reaction at such a young age, right?
Right.
So just
I
interesting.
Yeah, and when I like think about home now, I think like by and large, most of the people there uh, are probably good people, right? And most of them
Yeah.
aren't intentionally uh racist. Like that sounds like a very, that's a different, what you're describing is a different thing. But I think
Yeah.
like most of like the passive stuff that you are like that I would, thinking back
Micro
on it now, like
racism.
experience, yeah, like it
Hmm.
was never out of like, I don't think any like intent to harm or be downgrading. It was just sort of like ignorance and not understanding what you're really saying, right? I think there's a lot of that, but yeah, that sounds like a different thing what you're
Sure.
talking about.
Before the break, talking a little bit about my experience with racism, and I think too, besides that one major event, I think our families did so much for that community
Hmm.
that you know it was largely muted what could have been. But I think there
Right.
was always that same classic though of like the Asian guys are good at math,
Yeah.
like that one, and we very much were. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
And I remember like the one thing I do remember is like uh there was a group of people at school that would always call me Egyptian, like a little Egyptian
Oh, you know what? I
Egyptian.
remember that.
And I
I
was like, I
do.
never like, took it harshly or anything, but I was like, yeah, that's probably not a great thing to say.
Yeah, looking back on it, probably not. And
But
again, from them, it was probably harmless.
yeah, exactly. Like there was nothing, and like those are people that like I consider my friends and that like are good people and that I like them. So I don't think it was anything malicious, but yeah, weird.
Yeah,
And I think like now, especially like having whenever you leave, right? When you leave home and you go to school, and even like Iowa State, not super diverse, like more diverse, but and then
yeah,
like moving here where like you get another, another dose of like not super diverse, but still more. But like, so like one of my friends, one of my good friends here is a black guy, like a large track athlete, like very built and put together black guy. And we were in Denver for a bachelor party, I don't know, a month or so ago. And we hopped off the train downtown. We are going to go get dinner. And we were just like walking down the street, and like some guy just like was walking by and just like looks at him and yells the N-word at him and like and stuff like that. I'm like, I never experienced anything like that. Like that is a different,
Yeah.
and like his reaction, like he just like looked at me. He's like, did we just hear that? Like, did we all see the same thing
Yeah.
there? And I'm like, yeah, what are you even supposed to do? It's not like we're gonna go fight him in the middle of the street, right? Like in downtown
Yeah.
Denver, like there's nothing you can do, and it's like it sucks. I feel bad, but I don't know. I've never experienced anything like that, and so I think my perspective has changed on that sort of thing.
Yeah. That, because I think that's another thing too, because where we're from, they teach you about racism, right? But in our case, well, I had an experience with it at a young age, but in the overall grand scheme of things, it was very much, like I said, muted, where we were kind of separate from the issue.
Right.
And then you're right, as we get into college and you meet new people, make new friends, and then they kind of tell you some of their experiences, you're like, oh, wow. Like, and again, since we never saw it, like we just have to be like, wow, like that's crazy that would ever happen. And
Right.
then sure enough, for you, it did in fact like happen right in front of you.
Mhm.
Right. And then you have to be like, wow, so there really are people like this that are out there living and breathing. And that's,
Yeah.
they go about their day living like that.
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why anybody. I don't know. It's a whole other conversation. You could talk about that for days.
Yeah. And again, most of that comes from how they were raised, right?
Mhm.
Unless you've been specifically jaded by, a certain ethnic group,
Right.
then most of it comes from upbringing, I would think.
Mhm. And like thinking about that, for your case, like your mom, and for my case, like my grandmother, like I think about like my grandma moved here, in the 60s, 70s, like late 60s or late 60s, early 70s, not knowing any English, like a little Asian lady moving, and in
Mhm.
that time, like I wonder what she experienced. And like um, she died when I was 12, 13, like when I was a young teenager. So I wasn't old enough to understand really and comprehend all of the things that she'd been through in her life. So I do wish like I had more time with her to get that sort of,
Yeah. Because you're at an age where like you wouldn't have had the wherewithal to ask those types of questions.
exactly.
Just because my Lolo and Lola, they live in Las Vegas right now, and
Mhm.
my Lolo suffers from dementia at this point because they're in their 80s, and it's a very common thing now, unfortunately. And I was very fortunate though before, and I've actually haven't seen him in quite some time, just with schedule and stuff like that. But just asking him how like he met my grandma, and she was there too. And it was funny. He was telling his side of the story, and then she would cut in and say like, "No, no, no, like this is what happened." And so you're right. Getting a chance to ask um, your grandparents some of those questions before it's too late is sometimes a blessing that hopefully a lot of people don't take for granted. We talk a lot, or on previous episodes, about losing people, right, in many shapes and forms, whether it's losing a friend. In our case, we experienced that too during our college years, or losing family members, or stepping away from, say, certain people or relationships that aren't benefiting us, even though we really wish they did. um, I guess I have been meaning to get somebody else's perspective on the matter. And I had alluded to this on previous episodes because I don't think I don't think anyone's really had this conversation with each other. But Lizzie passed away. It would have been 7 years ago now, something along those lines, because it was
Yeah,
our sophomore
we were sophomores
year.
in college. Yep.
Yeah. And um, obviously we had experience with Dylan before that, but
Mhm.
Dylan was kind of more like big brother type situation. And even then, he was more like the guy in my brother's class. I wasn't entirely as close with him as obviously Lizzie. I mean, I think a
Right.
lot of people knew how close the Freeburns were to my family.
Hmm.
Um, and then I put a lot of guilt on myself because I felt like I had gotten over, or I had came to terms with her passing at maybe what some people would consider a quicker time frame maybe than others.
Yeah.
And then I remember just but I think when I look back, I didn't really come to terms with it, because what would happen every year, every anniversary, and everyone posts all these photos. I'd get so mad. I'd get angry. I'd be like, just let her die. Like, why are we, doing all this? Like, why are we? And then looking back on it, I'm like, wow, like I still had all this like pent up
Yeah, that was
anger.
a sign that you weren't past it yet,
Yeah,
right? Like the fact that you had that emotional reaction to it.
yeah. And obviously I do not want to just forget her. And obviously Lizzie was probably one of the most genuinely nice people that probably I'll ever meet in my entire life. And I think that's the sad thing too, is the fact that she's not able to continue to spread that around. But I guess for you, now that we're 7 years later, how did that impact you? Because I know that for me, I started hating homework blank during engineering school. Like I went on a downward spiral. I just did not give a two shits about college for a little while, and then just picked my pieces up later as time went on. What happened with you?
So I think I'm sort of like, I agree with you that I don't think any of us really handled it very well. Like you would think that with the tight knit small group of people that we had that all experienced the same thing at the same time, that we would have people that we should have talked to, and like we should have been able to get through it together, right?
Yeah.
And but like at the same time, like we're 20, 19 years old, like you don't know how to deal with something like that, I don't think, until it happens to you. And so at the time, like I remember, like to this day exactly where I was standing when I found out. And
Me too.
And then I think I picked you up at Towers.
Yep.
And then we went home.
Because my dumbass was headed to a Halloween party.
Yeah.
Like pick me up.
Literally just like grabbed you, and we didn't even go and get you any stuff or anything. I think we just left from there and went back.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I am a not very healthy person when it comes with dealing with stuff like that, right? So in my like personal loss category, I guess, so like I lost my grandfather when I was 7, and then 2 grandmothers when I was like 12, 13. And then Dylan happened, and then Lizzie happened, and then my grandpa Jack died, I guess, a year and a half ago now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very much a person that just like suppresses his feelings about that stuff and just tries to be there for the other people around me.
Yeah.
That's sort of my MO when it comes to things like that. And so I think I did that. Really, I just like buried it, and I went about my life, and I probably handle my emotions behind closed doors in a less than healthy way. I definitely drink a lot in times like that. I drink more than I usually do. Which, like, I'm an alcohol enthusiast, right? Like, I'm not going to work drunk.
I get pretty enthused too about alcohol. Yeah, I get
it. and so like, I definitely, like, I understand that is what I do whenever whenever I have things that I'm going through, and
why do you think
not a healthy way to go about it at all. But yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
Why do you think you were like that? Why do you think? Yeah, you ever give it some critical thinking?
Yeah, like I've tried to. Like I really haven't been able to come up with an answer, because I think like my home life, my parents are very open and welcoming, and like my dad's oldest brother committed suicide when he was in his early 20s, and so my dad was always very much like, hey, if anything's ever going on with you, like talk to me, because I want to talk to you about it, right? So it was never that. I don't know. It's just how I've always been, how I've always handled things like that.
I remember, and I touched on this on another episode, but I had always been, I considered myself kind of like class clown, like a jokester. If you remember Jim Gage, our science teacher, and like he would flip flop every other class because I couldn't stop pulling jokes with that dude. Like literally, it's like every other sentence out of my mouth. He and I were just throwing sarcastic comments at each other. And one day he'd love it. The other day he'd tell me to shut the hell up.
Yeah.
But that was my MO. Like I was always the guy that tried to make other people like smile or laugh. And then I remember the next day we after you picked me up from Towers, we drove home. We didn't do anything that night, obviously, but the next day we went over to the Freeborns, the whole class, and everyone was still upstairs, and I went downstairs just to. I was reminiscing a little bit, and I'll never forget it because I think I was at a point in that life where Lizzie and I we had dated in high school, but I hadn't really seen her in 3 years, like in that way, because it was very much like dating my sister. We were so close, we didn't really know how to. We didn't know how to transition from that, and we came from these like really religious backgrounds too, so we didn't really know how to like. It was just so weird getting to this kind of like physical type of relationship versus what we had before, and that's why we didn't work out. And so I remember I went through old texts as anyone would when someone passes like that. I remember after we broke up, she's like, "Oh, this is gonna change us. Like we're not gonna talk as much anymore." And I was like, "Oh, like no, like we'll still be exactly the same." But she was right. Like I hardly ever talked to her once I went to Iowa State. And but I remember when I'm down in their basement, right next to their TV, they had a photo of me and her at senior prom, and I lost my shit, man. I don't know if you remember that, me losing my shit in the basement, but I just uncontrollable wailing, just like a newborn baby out the goddamn womb, man. Like it was so gut wrenching. And then I was loud enough to where people upstairs heard me, came down. And that's another thing too. I think it was nice because I feel like I think this was what was getting me angry, is like no one was expressing like what was really going on. Like no one was like really crying. Everyone was just like, "Oh, it's good to see you." Like all this like surface level shit.
Right.
And then like I feel like the moment I broke down, everyone else broke down.
Yeah, like it gave everyone permission to actually show what they were feeling inside.
Yeah. And oh yeah, and now I'll get to that too. But after that moment, because again, everyone in the class had only ever known me as the guy that tries to make everyone smile. And here I am now making everyone cry. And like I held that with me. I'm like, I never wanted anyone to see me like that ever again.
Yeah.
Never do I want people to see me break down like that. And that was how I got over it. I suppressed it all.
You buried it deep inside.
Yeah,
never let it come out again.
Everyone else is hurting. I'm going to be the guy that will be there for them, and instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Which
very
again,
much the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, not very healthy. Not sure where it comes from. And I think I do though, actually, where I was always just kind of the people pleaser because I kind of felt a lot of like needing to fit in because I was a part of so many different friend groups. It was almost hard to like identify with one.
Right.
And at that age, you're trying to just I don't know. High school friendships are just such a weird dynamic when I look back on them. But you just want to be present. You don't want to be the guy that doesn't have anyone to talk to in high school, I guess. And that was how I dealt with it. And I mean, that's kind of still to this day where I'm very much the guy that tries to just make people laugh.
Yeah, I think now I try to make a conscious effort when something like that's going on, to just talk a little more, right? Like I don't have to like go and be like overly sharing because I'm just not comfortable with that. But I try to make an effort to be a little more, I don't know, forward with what my feelings are at the moment.
Yeah,
but it's so hard. Like like a year. So when Grandpa died, which his was different in the way that Lizzie's was different, in that it was sort of sudden and out of the blue and no one was expecting it. All, my grandparents all had cancer, and we all sort of expected, we were just waiting for that to happen. But when grandpa died from COVID, like he gets it and then he's gone in a week, so and when that happened, I was the same way, where I was just trying to be like the strong one that gives everyone hugs and like holds them while they're crying, instead of expressing my feelings at the same time. So
Yeah.
I'm not good at it yet. Still working at it.
Yeah, I think the shitty thing too is the only way to work on it is to continually experience that situation.
Right.
Right. It's not like a lot. No, obviously there are ways to, work on it and with emotional intelligence and stuff like that. But it's not something you can really practice.
Right. You can practice it in theory until you actually have to, do it. And then
yeah, that Mike Tyson quote where everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of time.
That's a big punch in the face.
Yeah. But I think, it's experiencing that at that age. Well, in your case, much younger too, with your family, kind of shapes who we ended up becoming, right? And, I know people that are very much worse at dealing with death. It affects them in a much deeper level. To sometimes, it sometimes can break them, right? And a lot of people too, years after the fact, will hold on to that. I guess not that, how have you came to terms with some of it?
I think so. I think I'm a lot better at it now.
Yeah.
And so last, I guess not that long ago, a few months ago, a coworker who I'm very close with, he's a good friend. I consider him a good friend, but he's quite a bit older. He's in his low 40s and or I guess maybe mid 40s, has a couple kids, but like is a really like good dude. His dad passed away, and he doesn't have any other like siblings or like aunts or uncles to deal with it with. So it was very much like he was on his own to deal with all of the stuff that goes along with having a parent die. And I guess I don't think his wife has ever really experienced anything quite like it before. And she wasn't handling it, or like didn't know how to support someone that was going through that. Right. And I felt that since I had, like I've experienced that sort of thing, not a parent, necessarily, but, someone that's experienced loss in that sort of way. I was sort of the person that he would, we would go have a beer after work and like just talk about whatever was pissing him off at the time, right? And just like giving him an outlet to talk to, because he didn't have another one. And I think that's sort of the important thing, is like when someone's going through a place like that, like just give them an outlet. You don't have to like be overt about it, or
you don't have to spill your life story.
Yeah, don't be like, hey, tell me exactly what's going on, but just like, hey, like you want to go have a beer and like, just sit down and chill out for a little bit, because like I know how stressed you are and I know you're going through a lot, and just take a little time. We'll hang out. So I think that's what I've learned from it. And that's what I wish I had done better, was like, hey, whenever I'm going through something, like let's just go do something that is semi-healthy and blows off some steam, right?
Yeah. Maybe a round of golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, on a more lighter note, because you're mentioning coworkers that are good friends of yours, again, you very much like me. The last week's episode, we talked about building community with my friend Maddie. You, very similar to me, moving away from our hometown. We went from a town of 600 to Iowa State, town of 60,000 during the school year, which I think even now is much higher. Like the number of people that go to Iowa State is like continuously increased year over year. Then, although I don't really know how big Wichita, Kansas is, but then in my case, I moved from town of 60,000 to St. Louis, which depending on who you talk to has several 100,000 people that live here, right?
Yeah. Des Moines, or Wichita is Des Moines-ish.
Des Moines is nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And for me, I didn't have any family, no friends in the area. I think that was a similar case with you in Wichita, where it was where the job was at. So that's where you went.
Yep.
Right. And then, for me, it took hanging out with a coworker, meeting that coworker's friends, because he grew up in St. Louis. Everything kind of branched out from there as far as like building community. How was that experience for you? Like, how did you transition from, our friends from small town to now the different friend groups that you have locally?
So I kind of was lucky that my first like foray into being away from home and away from Ames was I did an internship here for 3 months for a summer.
Mm.
Um, and so during that internship, which was my first time where I moved down here, and I knew almost nobody. There was a couple other kids from Iowa State that I kind of knew that were coming down here to work for the same company. So I had
Phillips,
at least,
Mike
uh,
Phillips, that's the name.
yeah. So he actually
Yeah.
came down here full time right after I did my internship. So he wasn't here my intern summer,
Okay.
but I did know that he was coming here. And then like I don't know if you knew Goose Matt Gustafson. I don't know. He was another Arrow kid.
Okay.
Uh, but so he came.
The goose.
Um, he was my roommate when we were interns here.
Mm.
And so during that internship, there was I think we had 400 interns at our company that summer, and so we did lots of things as interns, as groups, and I made some friends during that process, right? And that was actually when I met my girlfriend at the time that I would date long distance for like a year. Um, and she had accepted a full-time offer to come back here as well. So
I forgot about her.
yeah, no, I
I
tried to.
forgot there was someone in between high school relationship and Erica.
Yeah. So so like when I was moving here, like my plan was that we were gonna like find like an apartment or something and move down
Yeah.
here. And then we broke up before I even moved here. And so with like a month left till I moved, I didn't really have a place to live.
Mm.
And so I reached out to an intern or somebody that I interned with, and she had a 2-bedroom apartment that she was living in by herself. And so she was like,
Mm.
yeah, like come live with me. And so I
That's
moved in
nice.
with her. We lived there for like 2 years, and that's sort of how I built out my friendship group, like basically starting with her. Like she would take me to the bar because she's local, so she grew up 30 minutes 20-ish minutes
Okay.
away. And so she sort of knew all the different places, and then we were meeting like other people our age, new hire ish, that worked for our company, because there's
Huge company.
almost 15,000 employees in Wichita, right? Like it's a
Right.
pretty big company. So um, I was meeting all of those sort of people, and that's sort of how I met my group of friends now. Most of my friends here are people that either work for the same company or have in the past, or like are tangentially connected to somebody that works at Textron, right? And so that's sort of how I like build out my friend group. And now that there's some Iowa State people here that I know too. Uh, there's lots of aerospace kids that moved to Wichita, so
Now,
it was easier for me, I think, than coming in,
yeah,
not knowing anybody or completely dry, right?
because correct me if I'm wrong, but you were always a person that did enjoy going out to the bar scene, right? Like that never
Yep.
was uncomfortable for you or anything
Yeah.
like that. And so when she would offer, say, hey, like, let's go out to this bar, it was always a yes, right? Not
Oh
a,
yeah.
yeah.
Our apartment that we lived in was like in Old Town is what it's called, and it's
Mm.
just adjacent to downtown. It's where all the bars are. So we literally lived across the street from all of the bars downtown. So yeah, we went out a lot.
Yeah.
um,
Well, I
and so
think,
that's a good way to meet people, honestly. Like especially when you're 22 years old and you're just starting your first job. Like what better way to meet friends and get to know people?
now, is it that friend group from your roommate that eventually led to meeting Erica too, or was that kind of a
Uh,
separate
Yeah, sort of. Like she was friends with some other, like I would say
friend
there's
of a
like a
friend
core
of a friend of a
group
friend?
friends, and then like our bigger group of Wichita friends is like I don't know 30 or 40 people that like if we have a big event or like a pool party or something, we've got a lot of people there. And so she was I would say a part of the bigger friend group than our sort of core group of friends that we have here.
Okay. And how long did you know her before you guys actually started dating?
Um, I would say like less than a year, and then we talked for a few months before we started dating.
Yeah,
Like I knew who she was for maybe a year or so, and then we talked for a couple months, and then we started dating.
sure, sure. Yeah, I think that's been kind of I don't know. That's how I found out I had this problem after my breakup on the later ends of last year. Was I was always the type of guy that wanted the person that I would date would always be like I wanted it to be natural, like a friend of a friend, right?
Mm.
But then I also had this rule where I'm like, I don't want to date in the friend group.
Yeah.
I don't want to fuck it up. And so like I like I didn't really realize the polar opposites that those
You're like,
two
how are you gonna
had.
meet someone then?
Yeah, exactly. And then it wasn't until like maybe a month or 2 months ago where I was like, wait, if if I wanted to be natural, it'd be a friend of a friend. And there were, several people I knew that like we would talk and stuff like that, but I never like
Mhm.
engaged with it because I didn't want to play with the idea. Uh, but then I was like, okay, well, if I never want to date in a friend group because I don't want to fuck things up, then I
Yeah.
will be single for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so, like,
Yeah.
at some point, you do have to kind of jump in,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think that's sort of like we got over that very quickly in Wichita because like
Yeah.
our friend group is literally the dating pool. Like there's no one else, and so like my ex-girlfriend, she dated another guy in our like larger group. Um, and
Yeah.
for a little while, like, and then she's moved away now and doesn't live here anymore. And then like when I first met Erika, she was talking to a guy in the larger group as well. And like, so I think that's probably how
Mm.
she got pulled into the group in the first place. Um,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. It's part of the deal here. You're not in a big enough
Yeah.
city that you can just meet people out of the blue very easily. I guess like it's
Yeah.
possible, of course, but
What I've come to find in talking with people that, again, are part of these larger friend groups, there's a lot of like in dating, right? Like people bounce around between people to people in the friend group, which is kind of weird at some point. But
yeah,
at some point, it just kind of reminded me a lot of high school where like there's a limited pool.
yeah.
People say like there's so many fish in the sea, but like really you're not really in the sea. You're like in a
Yes,
pond.
yes. I don't have a big enough fishing pole.
Yeah, it's like I don't have a boat. I can't go to one end of the lake to the other. Like I'm staying
Right.
in one part of the sea.
Yep.
And so like at some point again you kind of have to come with the to terms with the fact that hey, you gotta kind of I guess make that leap of faith. I guess was there like a moment where like you were hesitant to start dating Erica? Because again, I've never had a chance to meet this girl, right? So I assume she's like this angel, godsend, like perfect person for Quentin. And but I assume there was probably some thoughts of like, well, what if this doesn't work out, or like, who knows if dating her is going to be different than maybe she's a different person to date than she is as a friend. Like,
Mhm.
what was going through your mind there?
I don't think I had that much of a concern with it because
Maybe I'm an overthinker.
I she wasn't far enough into the friend group to make it a worry. I think that if I didn't start dating her, that she would have
uh,
eventually went back to her original friends, and like we probably would have never seen her again.
mm,
That's my guess. I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's how I was thinking about it at the time. I was like, this is sort of a no lose. Like either it works or I never have to see her again. It's not too big of a deal. I
mm.
didn't think she was. Um, yeah. Anyways.
Okay. All right. Cool, man. Um, well, sometimes I feel like when I do these, it's a lot of like me. Wait, is that number two?
No.
Wait, you had one earlier. Okay, yeah, no, I mean number one, yeah.
We're
Man,
just getting going. What do you mean? We got another hour left, right?
this whole time I was sipping on this beer, thinking that you weren't drinking at all. So now you took the whole truly without me noticing. Um, so sometimes when I do these, it's just like I don't want it to be just like an interview of me throwing questions at people, like because again, the great thing about having you on the show compared to other episodes is or the whole reason why I started the podcast, just to bring everything full circle for people listening, watching, was when I went through what I was going through. I was very fortunate to where I had family, a big family that was there for me. I
Mhm.
had a friend group, both local, not local, that supported me through that I could always talk to at the drop of a dime, right?
Mhm.
And then I was fortunate enough to also have access to therapy, which a lot of people do not.
Mhm.
So the podcast was designed for a way, well, I have all these things, and I know there's so many people out there that don't have access to the maybe a bad family dynamic, not the healthiest of friend groups, no access to therapy, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Like, how can I give that to them? And so the core focus of the podcast was reconnecting with old friends that you just
Yeah.
they had their life, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's nice to just say, hey, can I steal an hour of your time?
Still an
And
hour whenever.
yeah, So this is, Q is like the what's the word? The embodiment of like catching up with the old friend. And that's why I think it's really, really cool where, although we'll see if we end up making it to the 10-year reunion, but
You better be there. Come on.
well, I'll make the best efforts.
You can sleep on my parents' couch. It'll be fine.
Well, they don't have that house anymore.
I know we'll have to drive farther away for it, but it's still a couch.
Well, you forget. I mean, my dad still lives over there too, so I can technically, but he's over in the Centerville area now.
Yeah, so you got to go through more cops to get to his house.
Yeah, like one. I don't know how many cops are around that area anymore, but but what I was saying is like, it could be a lot of episodes is just me hammering questions at people, right? Like, hey, tell me about this experience you had, because I know some of their background. So there's a lot of times conversations I try to intentionally lead to. But a lot of times I don't get asked like, like people like have questions for me because like they're on my podcast. So they feel like I'm supposed to be the one boom, boom, throwing them out. Yeah. So I'll only like anything you want to ask good old David.
When are you moving to Wichita? No, I'm just kidding.
I get asked all the time to move back to Iowa. And it's just,
I want to ask you to do that.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Move to Kansas instead. It's so much better.
So much. Yeah.
No, we legalized sports betting here last week though. So one for the team.
Yeah. Chalk that one up to Wichita, man.
No, dude, I don't know. I always feel like, whenever we do get together, we have these really long conversations because our lives, while different, like kind of run parallel paths, we have a lot of things in common, and then a whole plethora of little things that make us very different. But and it makes it very nice to like talk to somebody that has sort of been through similar experiences as you, right? And you can kind of bounce off different parts of your life, and we should do it more often.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing that I found out, which was both a blessing and kind of like a slap to the face for me, was I had all these friends, I'm reconnecting, and I find out all this stuff that they go through that I didn't know beforehand. And I'm like, was I really a friend?
I feel the same way about you, because I know you go through obviously stuff. And
yeah.
I feel bad that I wasn't like talking to you while it was all happening,
No, and that's the thing, is like you can't expect. Again, where I was like, man, like I just kept telling him, I was such a shit friend. Like this person that I considered a good friend that I was relatively close with, they went through all this horrific event that I knew nothing about. And so that's why it's been such a nice passion for me, or like something I can get to look forward to. It's just like, hey, tell me about yourself. It's like relearning my friend. It's like refriending my friend, because they're almost strangers. Like that's the weird thing. They're friends that are still friends, but you don't know them enough. So they're like strangers that you want to be less strangers again.
I'll say this though. So full disclosure, I haven't been listening to your podcast every week. Like usually I'll like listen to your clips or whatever.
I don't expect people to.
No, but hold on. So I went on a little binge and listened to like, I don't know, not all of them, but a bunch of the episodes. And first of all, they're really good. I liked them all. And second, I felt like in every one of those, there's always something that you can connect with. Like everybody's got something that you're like, hey, I've been through something like that, like I can connect with that. And so I don't know, I really like what you're doing. It's really cool. And
thanks, man.
Yeah, I hope people connect with it. I'm pretty hard to connect with just because like, I don't know, we didn't really talk about anything really, really bad, but
well,
or
again,
sad or like upsetting. But
the goal, because a lot of people ask me, well, where do I want to take the podcast, right? Because I've been doing it now for 4 months, which is kind of another like surreal thing that I've been. I didn't think it'd last 3 weeks, kind of thing, and I joked about it. I was like, well, I started the podcast because I was just a sad son of a bitch, and over the last 6 months, life has really, really treated me very well. And people ask me, well, when life is good, are you going to just like end the podcast, like stop? And I don't think I will. I think it'll transition into kind of what I wanted it to be in the start, where it's just like, hey, I'll talk to an old friend
Mhm.
and we'll kill an hour over a couple beers or something like that.
Yeah. We'll have to
Um,
do a Day with David After Dark edition
oh
sometime.
no, yeah, yeah. When the I remember, um, oh shoot, don't do this to me, brain. Don't do this to me.
Oh
Remember
no.
what you were thinking. Um, what I wanted, what is kind of cool that I think the podcast can go to for people listening as far as like what to expect for future content down the road is, a lot of what we focus on is very based around mental health or social circles, social science. And I want to start bringing on people that have been in, say, those fields
Hmm.
that can give a more educated perspective
Yeah.
on what we go through. Because a lot of this is, oh, well, what's my feeling about it?
Yeah.
Or what's been my
Experiential stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like, and how did you handle this, right? and
Mhm.
and again, sometimes it's like there's not really advice, because it's very,
Right.
it's I have to come to terms with, like, why am I the guy giving advice, right? Just because I experienced it doesn't mean you should listen to how I handled it,
You
right?
know, I didn't experience it very well.
Yeah. And so I do want to bring on maybe people with some more expertise, some more know-how, that could say, hey, like, this is one, why you reacted the way that you did in this situation, or like, hey, I'm working with one of my coworkers. His wife has been, and we'll see if I can actually convince her to come on the show. From what I've heard, she's pretty open to the idea.
Small tangent.
Yeah. Well, back from another quick break, had to grab another brewski. Um,
I'm drinking water for what it's worth.
sure. Yeah. We can definitely tell inside that crystal clear mug of yours that that's water. Hmm. The, one thing that I do want to talk about with you, with more as a kind of a fun, because I don't think we really get to talk about it a whole lot. And I had texted you a little bit about this, but like talking about toxic relationships,
Uh-huh.
bad, like just, and I'll share first, right? I'll open the door. Because I didn't do a lot of dating in college that freshman year, but sophomore year kind of opened up some doors as I moved off campus and met different friend groups. I just remember there's this one girl I was seeing, a very short relationship, and one that took me actually a long time to get over for whatever reason. But I remember I have a bad tendency to date um, the bartenders and the hairstylists and the sort, like, um, and I think a lot of them, you talk to them and they'll say, like, yeah, we're all kind of crazy. But I remember there's this girl that I dated, when you talk about like family background, and I didn't come to find out about this until we had much later split up. But like, her mom had told her uh, something like, "Hey, when are you going to get pregnant so that the government can pay us?" Like, it was one of those, and I was just like, when I came to find out later, I'm like, wow, dodge that bullet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember this other. I don't know what was going on sophomore year. I remember this other relationship. It was a girl, came from a very heavy Christian community up in northern Iowa, and like her parents thought she was this saint. Like, yeah, her parents had no idea what the stuff this girl was doing in college, kind of thing. And um, lo and behold, everything started to come out about stuff she did before she even met me. Like, it wasn't anything that I did, but I'm a
You didn't,
temple.
yeah, so you didn't corrupt her. That
Yeah,
wasn't you.
like no, it wasn't me, but and I came to find out too, like, she was telling her parents lies about me, this chick, because like she was telling, and her parents love me too, but I thought it was just because of the person I had, but it turns out it was also because of the stuff that she was telling about me, where she was like, yeah, David's like this leader in the youth group at this local church, and like all this other stuff. I came to find out, I was like, what are you telling your parents? I don't do any of this. Like, when
David's
did you?
basically the second coming of Jesus. Just look at
I
him.
was,
Like he
I
grows
was
his
like,
hair out, and you
yeah.
know.
Well, it's like, what was the plan? Is like, eventually they're going to ask me like, hey, how's that youth group? I'm gonna be like,
Right.
they're doing great. We need to have a talk. And but basically it was like this interesting thing of like when her parents found out about like how not such an angel their daughter was, they like ripped her out of school because they were paying for school. Daddy was paying for school, ripped her out of school, had them come back to live with them for a few weeks. And like I had been seeing this girl for like a few weeks at most, right? So it was very like, and um they're like, David, we're just gonna bring her back for a little while so that we can fix her. And I was like, oh my God. And they're like,
oh no.
yeah, they're like, yeah, we're gonna make sure she wears her makeup every day. We're gonna go shopping, get all new clothes, and like we're gonna make her a proper lady. Like literally, quote unquote, this is, swear to God. And I've dated this girl for like 3 weeks at this point. I'm like, oh shit, like what am I getting into? Right. And so I'm like, whatever, like I'll let it happen. And a few weeks go by and there's like this deadline. We're like, okay, on this day she's coming back, right? Well, that day comes and then like I get a call from her mom and she's just like, hey, like this, we found out that this problem runs even deeper than we knew. She's gonna stay with us for even longer.
Oh my God.
I'm saying like I've been dating, I haven't seen this girl longer than I dated this girl at this point, right? I'm like,
you can stop texting me now. I don't want to know anymore.
So, and I was going to this family reunion in California, to Santa Maria, something like that, Santa Ana, something like that. And the mom puts this girl on the phone, and this girl's like, "Just break up with me." And I was like, "Okay."
Off me into it. I think took a lot of convincing.
And then I hang up, and it's the classic, like 2 seconds later, I get a call back, right? And she's like, "Don't break up with me." I was like, we're not doing this. Like, I'm with my family right now. Like, it was nice knowing you.
I'm a sophomore in college. Like, calm down.
Yeah, just not good. And like there's some other stuff that I'll talk about off podcast because it's not safe for children to ever listen to. But just she did some weird shit. And I would have thought that, hey, that'd be the end of me ever interacting with this girl, right? It was not. It was like Halloween of that year. Halloween's just really have not been in my favor in my life. Our lives.
It's a bad day.
And I was out at a bar or some house party on campus. I can't remember where at Iowa State, but I was out and about. My next door neighbors were good friends, Drew and Sadie. They're on episode 1 of the podcast. The reason I knew this girl was through Sadie. She was a hairstylist, and had this other girl was like in hairstyle cosmetology school, and she was like, "Hey, like I want to come hang out with you." And Sadie was like, "Yeah, that's perfectly fine." Like blah blah blah. And she was with a new man too, so we thought it'd all be like water under the bridge. She's seen someone else. Well, apparently, like the whole night, this girl was like asking like where I was, because I wasn't there. I was out having my own thing. And she was like, and basically was like, if he really wanted to see you, he'd be here. Like he's out having fun. And apparently like this chick made her guy at the time, who was also in the army, punched Sadie in the face. This military dude just straight up like decked her.
What?
Yeah. And this is the thing, I didn't find out about this until much later. Like I'm at this moment, I'm at the bars having a great time.
You had no idea that one of your really best friends just got punched by him.
Yeah. And so like luckily there's this group of guys across the hall. Joey Tompoulos, who hopefully one day I'll bring on the show too. Just a really good guy. He teaches right now. I think he's still in the Texas area, but maybe he's moved around just with that industry. And he was like, they were throwing some kind of like house party or something like that, maybe across the hall, or apartment party, and he like heard the yelling in the hall that was going on from my apartment. And after all this incident happened, he like, I'm not sure if he like broke things up, but he was just like, hey, like you guys can come hang out with me and like get away from the situation. And obviously this girl was very much quickly kicked out of our apartment and sent on her way.
Mm-hmm.
And then like my dumbass gets home the next day, and pretty much like I have to find out all about this like secondhand. I
Yeah.
don't even know if they told me about it the next day. Like it might have been a week went by, and they're like, "Oh, hey, do you remember when this chick came into town?" I was like, "Yeah, I was at the bars. How'd that go?" And they told me how it went. I was like,
Not good.
how, why, like, how does this happen? Like, how, um, yeah. So that
Like,
was another,
I've never been involved in any physical altercations, at least.
yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm a step over. So just, but I think, because I think the big relationship, if I'm remembering right, that for you, that was really bad was that one that came from high school, transitioned into college, where I didn't get the chance to see a whole lot of Q Fowler.
Well, and that's kind of one. So,
And no one did.
yeah. So we can start from the beginning if you want. Like, so I had my high school girlfriend. Went to college, lived in the dorms, did whatever. I had like a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good freshman year. Whatever, it's fine. Summer after freshman year. So blessing and a curse with the way my parents raised me was that they were like, okay, you can go do whatever you want, but you have to live with those consequences, right? So uh, the summer after my freshman year, I was originally supposed to go home. I was gonna go work at the bank, live at home, make some money, do whatever,
Yeah,
right? Because my parents were always supportive of me, and like I had a full ride scholarship to school, so like they would help me pay with my rent, but like other than that, like I had to fend for myself. Like I was buying my own food, doing if I wanted to go get anything, like they're like, yeah, you can, but you have to go make your own money to do all that stuff, right? Um, and so I was gonna go home to like make some money, live at home, save up, whatever for the next year. But I was like, oh, I want to go. My girlfriend lives in Ankeny. She's going to DMAC. Um,
mm-hmm.
I want to stay up here. I don't want to go home. And they're like, are you sure? Do you really want to
Mm-hmm.
do that? And at first they're like, we don't think it's a good idea, but like you can do what you want. This is your decision. Like you're an adult now, you can do what you want. But we don't think it's a good idea. And I said, okay, well I'm gonna do it. So
Thanks, mom
so
and dad.
I moved to Ankeny, moved in with her. Which, first of all, anybody listening, if you're a child, don't move in with your girlfriend when you're 19 years old. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and like it was bad on multiple levels. So I lived with her. She was living with Natalie at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while living together, like people do, like they were friends before, or like at least like got along. But like after you live with someone, sometimes you just don't, you don't
Yeah,
get
from what
along
I heard, they
anymore.
didn't mesh well at all.
No, so living together, they did not get along at all. And that like really put a strain on my relationship with Natalie and Kaylin, who are like two of my best friends in the whole world that I've known my entire life. So
Right, right.
number one, like that was like downside number one. Number two is like I was living
Big
in
downside.
Ankeny, like I
Yeah.
was paying for my own, like I was paying my rent, paying whatever. I went and found a job at a golf course to work at. I was like working 60 hours a week, like just paying my rent and paying my food and all of that stuff, right? For the summer,
Yeah.
which was a great job, by the way. I love that job. I would rather be at work than being at the apartment with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But so at that time, we had already signed a lease to live together the next year, our sophomore year of college.
Oh.
And so I, it was me and her sister and her sister's fiance at the time. And we were
Mm.
all living together. And it just it wasn't good. Like I had anytime I want to go out and do anything with my friends or like go literally do anything, like I was always made to feel guilty that I was leaving or like not spending time with her or whatever. I'm like,
Mm.
and so that's like eventually what percent, like probably halfway through that year, I was like, I like this isn't it. Like I don't want to do this,
Yeah.
And but like we were living together. I didn't have anywhere to go. Like I was still paying rent there. I didn't have any other options. So
Yeah.
actually her brother and sister bought a house that year and they were moving out, but they were still paying rent at the apartment,
Mm.
or her sister and fiance, whatever.
Sure.
And so they moved out, and like I literally took my shit and I moved it into their spare bedroom. And I'm like, I'm here, but I'm not here. Like, do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing. Um, and that obviously didn't work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so basically we powered through that year, just like trying to make it work and live with each other. And and I was like, with the intention of like the end of the year, I'm gonna go back home and like we're gonna take some space and do our own thing. And so I moved home that next summer. Didn't really see her a whole lot. Like maybe we would go once a week or something, go out to dinner, and just kind of like do that sort of thing.
Go
Um,
through the motion.
yeah. And at that point, I was pretty done with it. But I just like I have deep inside of me, I have a really hard time breaking up with people. Like I can't do it. I don't know what it is without me. I've never been good at it. Um,
Yeah.
and so I couldn't do it. I couldn't pull the trigger to end it. Uh, the next year, the fall, we went on a trip, and on that trip, I just didn't want to be there at all. And so when we got back to the trip, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like we're not doing this. We're not living together the next year at college. I'm living with a couple other guys, and so I ended it. Um,
Was
Probably not
that? Did
the
you
best
move
way.
into South Duff?
So that year, that was our junior year. Uh, I was living at Mortensen Place, all the
Oh,
way out in
okay.
West Ames. So it was like the
Yep.
farthest west apartments at that time.
Yep.
um, and
Because I
so
know Kaylin, Natalie. Oh, the Morrison place. This is where.
Cole
Uh,
and Ryan
yeah.
Kirsch and those guys, I was living with
Hmm.
them out there.
Okay.
And
That's the
so
same year that Kyle and Kaylin and Jordan
Jordan, yep, they were living.
moved in.
So they lived
So
in, yep.
sometimes I forget that Jordan ever lived with those guys because
I
Jordan
know.
will come down to St. Louis a couple times.
Yeah, and
Because he
I talk to Jordan every day. Like he's one of my best friends now.
really still
Yeah.
sweet.
But it is weird because like Kyle was never there for most of our college, and Kalen was the same way. He was gone like almost every weekend.
Yeah, because
So it is
they
weird to
had
think that they lived
prior.
together.
Yeah, Kyle. Yeah, Kyle and I we had a falling out. Um, we eventually made amends. It was actually because like Lizzie passed away, and it was that day we went to your place. Like all the class just kind of came over to the Fowler abode as we always did, and kind of just like caught up a little bit. Again, that whole day pissed me off. Just like everyone acting like everything was all right when nothing was, and
Mhm.
I remember like Kyle's girlfriend at the time, who was
The worst.
hey, people may change. I haven't spoken with this person in many years. Who knows how she is now? But at the time, the worst. And I remember she was just like going on and on about how she was like Lizzie's best friend. Like just I was just sitting here like, bitch, I was Lizzie's best friend. Like on the guy side of things, like, and we never talked about you.
It's
Like
like you don't even go here. What do you mean?
you're not what you think you are. And I remember saying that to Kyle, I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, it kind of bothered me how she said she was like Lizzie's best friend, man. And he was like, oh, well, she danced with Lizzie like 10 years ago or something like that. I don't know, something like that. I think he said. I was like, oh yeah, but still. And I left it at that. It was like a harmless, like I said like one sentence. But that got under Kyle's skin, apparently. Like it really bothered him to a point. And that's why I never saw you guys junior year. Like trying to hang out with Kyle did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like I missed he didn't invite me to his 21st birthday party, which is like actually like people listening, like, oh, I didn't get invited to the birthday party. You guys don't know Kyle.
Yeah.
This guy did not drink an ounce of alcohol the entirety of growing up. And when you're in our small town, I was drinking by the time I was 13. Like that's all we did, And this guy was holding out till 21, like a good student or a good person. Not even for like religious purposes, just like wanted to abide by the law.
Yeah.
That's what he was. He didn't have anything against alcohol. He's just, I want to wait till I'm 21 so it's not illegal.
You did miss out on his best, in my opinion, his best year of life because
I'm sure he's
that was maybe since,
yeah,
but like that year, him and said terrible ex-girlfriend broke up that year.
Yeah,
and that is when Kyle came out of his shell, right? And
yeah.
and so to kind of tie that back into toxic relationships, it's really sad that a girl that in the grand scheme of things really didn't matter or amount to anything in his life would ruin a friendship and at a time when like that friendship could have been blossoming. It's sad. It's a bummer.
And it's, I think that's one of the, at the end of the day too, I'm a people watcher. I'm the most fascinating organism on the planet are humans. Like we're all
observe.
just, yeah, we're so weird, man. And I just remember like I saw all these photos of Kyle on his 21st birthday. I'm like, why, Kyle? I didn't get the invite, man. Like, because we used to talk. I mean, I was at Kyle's place
You were
more than I was at your place.
Yeah, I would say I think like you were probably
Kyle was my best friend.
Yeah, it was like you were closest to him out of our whatever group of 5 people you say, or 5 guys, I guess.
Yeah, like Kyle was, Kyle's my boy, and like I would shovel pig shit with him, at his place. That's how close you are. And believe me, the only person that made shoveling pig shit fun was Kyle. Like I remember I would ask his parents like, hey, can I hang out? And they were like, well, Kyle's doing chores. And I was like, okay, I'll do chores too. Yeah. Like that's just how much like we'd hang out. That's what hanging out in our town meant was, hey, you gotta do chores on the farm. And then it wasn't until a much later date, and I'm not even sure when, but it was after he had split with said worst person in the world. And we started doing pickup basketball again. That's what it was. I think I saw you guys at Lead one time randomly. I was playing pickup with another group. I was like, hey, like, hi, guys I grew up with. Like, how have you been? I
haven't seen you in forever.
And Kyle and I like reconnected again. And that he told me, he admitted to the fact that he's like, like that moment where you said that about her, like that's why I stopped talking to you. And he's like, and then he was like, I didn't realize as well the way that she was treating me and controlling me, that was also like it heightened that feeling, because I think he probably told her about what I said, and then she was like, oh, fuck David. And Kyle was like, yeah, fuck David.
Right.
And
100%.
And again, I don't normally use even names on this podcast, but like in this case, Kyle, like I'd love to talk to him and like figure out like, hey, like what exactly, like how did that conversation go at some point?
Yeah.
But I know Kyle's doing his own life now too, because he's a married man with Danielle, and I'm sure they're doing great, and wish them all the best. But he again, through pickup basketball, reconnected with Kyle. He told me this like why we kind of had a falling out, and I was so surprised because again, I'm over here in my corner of the world like ignorant as to why Kyle won't like, we won't hang out, and it's turned out it's from this one sentence I said to him. Like just one sentence.
And it wasn't even about him, it was about somebody else that he cared about very deeply at the time.
Yeah.
And so like being around him whenever like that relationship was ending, like he is a very, I think he like whenever, I don't know, I'm not one to speak to him, right? But definitely like my experience with Kyle is that when he gets in a relationship, he goes in head first,
Yeah, all
in. And he is always all, which makes him a great person to be in a relationship with, right? But like if he jumps headfirst into a bad one, then that's hard for everyone else around you, not just him, anybody that does that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
I did that. I literally did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Mine just ended before his did. Slightly.
Yeah.
And so
and luckily he didn't have to live with her.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's luck or just stupidity, but don't do it, kids on the camera. Don't live with your girlfriend in college.
Yeah. If for people that have kids out there and you ask them, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Don't be the person with your girlfriend at 19.
And it's not even like, I don't know. I've been, I don't know. She's not like she was a bad person. I don't like hate her, and like I don't talk to her anymore, or like I haven't had contact with her since we broke up, basically. But sometimes people just don't get along that way, and it's okay to leave that and move on and find something that's better.
Tell me about Erika.
That's what I have to say about toxic relationships.
Tell me about this girl that came into your life, Q. Because I'll tell you, man. I mean, it's interesting because again, I don't see you for so long, but every time I see you, I'm like, Q's the same person. He's the same guy. Not like.
I put on like 30 pounds, so.
All right, keep that sweatshirt on. We don't have to worry about it. But I mean that in a good way. Where like
I think a lot of people are like, man, like, you worry that you haven't seen someone in so long and like the dynamics changed or something like that. But I think, as with most cases with people back home, like it's all still there, right?
Mhm.
Um, like what has Erica been for you? We're talking about these toxic relationships, and then finally, like I think in both your case and like my case now, that which I won't delve into, like I've been meeting a lot of great people, but um, you're in a situation that's actually good for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, she's way too
And
nice to
she's
me.
gonna listen to this,
I know she
so
probably will.
definitely.
She's way too nice to me because like I don't know. As a highly self-critical person, I'm kind of a shitbag, to put it lightly.
Oh yeah. Well, why do you think
No,
so?
I like playing video games and drinking most of the time, and then and when I'm not doing that, like I like hanging out with my friends, like I playing slow pitch and doing other things. So like I am not great at devoting time to her. Like that is my flaw in our relationship is I'm not the best at being like, hey, like Erica wants to go do this, we should go do this. Like that I recognize that in myself and I try to be better at it than I am. But she's very patient with me, which is
Mm,
what
wow,
you know keeps us going. Because if she
that's
wasn't
what you
patient,
like.
yeah, if she wasn't patient with me, I don't think it would go so well.
Yeah.
But
Now, does
being an
she
introspective
sometimes
person,
does
go.
she come to like your slow pitch
Oh
stuff?
yeah,
Like, yeah, I mean, like,
yeah. So she's there, like, and not because she wants to be. Like, she would rather not be there. I think most of the time. So,
oh really? Okay.
you know, and she likes saying like we have, she uh, with my so when we sign up for slow pitch, like I'm signing up with one other person, and the guy that I signed up this year also has a like girlfriend right now that like a new girlfriend that comes to watch, so she has someone to hang out with. Otherwise,
That also wishes she was rather not there.
exactly right. And so like last year, it was like she didn't have anybody to watch like she would come with me and just sit there by herself and watch slow pitch, and like nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
And
No
so
one's.
at least this year she's got someone to be commiserate together with. Um, but yeah, like
Misery loves company.
she makes up for my deficiencies, and that hopefully
Hmm.
I uh drag her out of her shell and make her come do things.
So, what does she like to do?
Honestly, she doesn't have a lot of hobbies. She is kind of
Mm,
an introvert. She likes to just kind of hang out and be lazy. She
nice.
runs, like she's way more active than I am, but she's not as social, I guess, as I am.
Yeah. Not a
So
social butterfly.
yeah,
Okay.
and so I pull her out of the house more, I think.
Mm,
Even though I kind of am turning into a recluse and sitting in my little office here in my basement a lot.
yeah. She much more like hey, let's stay in and watch a movie together. That's like quality time for her.
Yeah. And then when she says that, I'm like, okay, so you watch a movie and I'll go play Valorant for 3 hours. And
Mm,
so I
Q, come
I
on, man.
I have to be
Come
better.
on.
I have to be better at being like, okay, I'll come sit up there and watch a movie with you.
Yeah.
That's my thing to work on. I need to get better at it.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like all this talk about like you need to be like present in a relationship and stuff like that too. Like, but I felt like sometimes it's as simple as like getting a mobile game on your phone. So like you could be up there with her, but then also be like,
You
what are we
say
watching?
that, you say that as a joke, but I literally just bought a Switch for that exact reason. I was like, I'm gonna get a Switch, I'll put some games on it, and then I'll come and watch like TV or Netflix or with you, and then I can just like play Pokemon on my Switch or whatever I want to do, right? And I'll
Nice.
be there hanging out with you, and she's okay with that. Like she's like, yeah, like if you don't want to watch the show, like just come hang out with me. That's what she wants. And so I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm trying to be better about it. I'm conscious of my shortcomings and how
What
I'm
you
trying
could
to
do,
fix them.
what you could do is you could buy yourself a nice little love seat for that office of yours, set up a second TV area, and she hangs out down with you.
Well, so you say that whenever we first met,
I do say that.
I was living in a loft apartment, right? Like one
Mm-hmm.
bedroom, open, like half wall in the bedroom. Like you could hear everything everywhere.
Mm.
And so then uh, COVID hit and she would just come hang out at the loft with me or at my apartment.
Because you guys
And
dated right when COVID
right
kind of
before
happened.
COVID hit, we started dating.
Yeah.
And then so COVID hit and like we didn't have anything else to do. And so I was just sitting and I was working from home. And she wasn't working at the time because she got laid off or whatever, furloughed, whatever you want to
Oh
call it.
yeah.
Her office, she worked at a dentist and the dentist closed basically because they
Uh,
for a while. So anyways, we spent a lot of time together and I was playing most of the time I was playing video games and she was watching TV in my apartment with me. and she would get so annoyed because I'm very loud whenever I play video
Yeah.
games most of the time. And she's like, I can't even hear the TV. And so now that I have my own office, I close the door, like she can't hear what I'm doing. And she's like, well, I never see you. I wish, I was like, you should put a chair in there. And I was like, do you remember,
Yeah.
a year ago you hated it. And now,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
It's funny, the apartment I live in now, I used to live in a studio apartment here in St. Louis, and the girl I was with at the time, like I started working from home because of COVID. So I moved in this big ass work desk for all my work equipment and stuff like that. And, your bed, my personal like video game PC setup, and then now this work setup are all in this one studio room. Right. And I had like 2 dressers, like shit was just, it looked like a 3rd grader designed this room and then dumped a bunch of shit in there. Right. And I love that apartment. I still do. Still love that area. But I remember like in the mornings, like to get into the hallway that would go to like my bathroom, my kitchen, you had to like squeeze by my work desk. And if you're like not fully awake, you just like ram your hip into it, or like you'd kick the wall. And I remember it was just like super unfortunate. But then we move out, we get into this bigger apartment, and everything's nice, a lot more space. And then it was like, I really miss the old apartment. I'm like, no, you didn't.
No,
Like,
no.
like you
You missed
forget.
the idea of it, but if you move back there right now, you would hate it.
Yeah, you forget the 7 o'clock in the morning, just cussing up a storm after you stub a toe. And then there was this one time to like this person I was with. I had a fire escape out back. That was the stairs we used to go to work in the morning. We walk out back. We lived above a coffee shop, so it always smelled of coffee and breakfast food and desserts and stuff like that. It's really nice. And there's one day, like, we hate stairs. I still to this day, because like carrying groceries upstairs. I've lived on the 3rd floor of buildings for the last 6 years, except for where I'm at now. I'm on the 2nd floor. And carrying up groceries and stuff, always awful. Going down the stairs too in the winters, shit's icy. And I remember just like one day, like this person slipped on the stairs and her coffee went flying. It's like a movie, like someone slips on a Mario banana, right? And so I told those stories just because it related to like the fact like Erika forgot what it was like.
Yeah.
when you
when you
around and like, oh, like we should, we should hang out again, like,
yeah.
And then she's gonna be like, you're so loud.
Yeah, why you
and like, so like that's like your safe space, like you said.
I spent too much time here. I need to get myself out of here a little bit more.
Just a little bit.
All right.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of the podcast with Quentin, with Q Fowler. Again, embodies the idea of what this podcast is for, which is just catching up with old people. And again, that life moves on, but sometimes some of the good stuff is just still there. We'll see you all next Saturday. If you feel like you need a friend, come in mine. Thanks, guys.